It's more important than ever to keep an eye on retirement.
Hi, and welcome into Eye on Retirement, the weekly show that keeps you in the know about all things retirement. I'm financial advisor and host Rick Everett, and today we're talking about a retirement client's to-do list. That's precisely why we've gathered a team of professionals for today's episode. Our panel includes Jonathon McCoy, financial advisor and partner of Market Advisory Group, CPA Joshua Sikora from Market Tax Services, estate planning attorney and founder of Eidelman Law Firm, Gerald Eidelman, and health insurance advisor Trey Bassa from Market Medicare Advisors. Welcome in, everyone. Jonathon, today we're talking about your new clients, Terry and Kathy.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about their situation.
Well, we were discussing this, and they brought to me sort of a question that we don't frequently get asked, but it I think made sense to us in terms of what is this to-do list? What are the things that we need to be keeping in mind? And the interesting thing is we had met with Terry and Kathy around 4 years ago, and they had actually financial advisors at two different institutions they had worked with for 10, 20 years apiece, and there was a lot of missing pieces in their financial plan, so it makes sense that they were coming back and revisiting a lot of this as they decided ultimately to not work with us back 4 years ago when we first met with them. Now they're having to revisit a lot of things because they're seeing how, because of some of the spending that they've got going on in retirement, they're spending through some of their retirement assets faster than maybe they had originally expected. One of the things that keeps coming to their attention is every tax season they're getting an unexpected tax bill, which indicates to us and our tax team maybe the withholdings aren't set up right, or maybe there wasn't enough preparation for what this taxable income was actually going to look like. So, working through that to-do list, we think about, how painful and expensive it can be to think about things and deal with the process of divvying up a loved one's estate when they pass away. What happens if something happens in your healthcare situation and maybe you need either some in-home healthcare services or potentially even a long-term care event like moving into a nursing home if you or your spouse can't take care of each other any longer? So to us, this to-do list is a lot more about thinking about the potential risks and impacts down the road and how your expenses throughout retirement will change, but also what is the most appropriate and professional way to manage those transitions in your life ahead of time. And we think about it in terms of all of our different departments, but think of it in terms of a to-do list. That to-do list is going to be different for everyone because those concerns and those risks are going to be different. You think about just the difference between a married couple and a single person going into retirement. There's a significant change in terms of we've talked about in other episodes, your powers of attorney who can step in and make financial and medical decisions for you. But, touching on each of these different areas, ultimately the to-do list for me starts with making sure that you're working with the right professionals that can bring those to-do items to your attention.
And a lot of people that are out there working with an individual financial advisor, the to-do list would be a lot shorter because the capabilities of that one individual are very limited.
Right, and we specialize as ourselves, financial advisors, having an appropriate risk tolerance analysis on a regular basis so that you're not exposing yourself unknowingly to investments that you may not be comfortable owning. That's one of our first primary jobs, identifying how much income you're going to need from your retirement portfolio. But then the big next immediate question we always have is, based on that level of income you need to live on, how much of that's going to be paid for by Social Security, but also what is the tax cost of realizing that income from your retirement accounts going to be? Down the line, another domino that falls. How is that taxable income going to impact the cost of your health care insurance? And also, if something happens to you prematurely, if you pass away unexpectedly early, a car accident, a stroke, whatever it may be, these things, they're unexpected for a reason. We can't really plan for them. But having the contingency plan in place in the event that they do, to leave your family in a process of continuity, as opposed to having to scramble to find, where's mom and dad's money? Who do we need to call? Who do we need to talk to? We don't understand the language. Being able to leverage the services of this entire team is crucial in those situations.
Another aspect of retirement planning is estate planning. Right. And there's a lot of tools that we can help with as financial advisors by taking what people are leaving as a legacy. When we talk about taxes, we always say, what do you think is going to happen with taxes? Are they going to go down, stay the same, or go up?
Right.
Traditional type IRAs, as an example, people in the past, you would inherit an IRA and you would take it off take it out based on how old was the person at the time they died and how old are you currently.
And you had an entire lifetime to execute those distributions.
Exactly. And now with the changes that came with 2019, some of those what were once perceived as blessings can actually become burdens if they're not handled properly tax-wise.
You know, I ask a lot of folks when we do our in-person educational presentations, how old were you when you had your first child? And typically the answer is 23 to 25 years old. It's very common for a lot of the baby boomer retirees that we're talking with today. So think about the fact that, you know, your life expectancy may be 85 to 90 years old, roughly. If you've already made it to 65, your life expectancy as a male is around 86 years old. So your children will be 60. Think about the taxable income that they're realizing in probably the highest earnings years of their entire career.
The peak of their earning lives, yes.
At the exact time that they've now got to begin distributing these retirement assets that you saved. And this multi-generational tax planning is becoming a much more pertinent piece of the long-term financial management that we do. That all of that ties back into the estate planning, obviously. How does the estate get distributed? But then also, you know, if your kids are going to end up paying a 10 to 15% higher tax rate, if that's a risk on your retirement funds as they inherit them, than you would have paid, first of all, we have to ask the question, is that a concern? Because some people will answer, I'm gone, that's their problem.
Right, or I plan on burning through it before I'm gone.
Correct, but I think the concern that your life's work, your life savings, is at risk due to things that are completely out of your control, which are your lifespan when you had children, and, well, in some cases that's in your control depending on...
Or it was at one point.
Yeah, at one point it was. But what are those tax rates going to be, especially if your children are still working? Now, a massive inheritance may allow them to discontinue work and maybe live on that inheritance. That is not commonly the circumstance that we find beneficiaries these days dealing with. And, you know, I think it's just the lack of foresight. We talk about this to-do list, the lack of that having been brought to people's attention by their financial advisor or by their estate planning attorney or by their tax professional is the reason why these issues still exist. It's because we've never had a generation dealing with all of these tax challenges as we do today, because we've never had a generation that has deferred all those taxes into these retirement accounts that in most cases financial advisors are doing nothing to address the long-term tax impacts on.
And the ability to address each of these concerns with the matching professionals in the same room and the client being the center of focus, watching out for their best interest.
Exactly right. And I find myself in some cases very eager to give a lot of advice when someone like Joshua or Gerald can step in and say, why don't we slow this down a bit? Because if you do these things on their investment portfolio, it's going to have these other outsized impacts in these other areas of their life or upon their family. So us as the financial advisors often find ourselves in the circumstance where we need to be taking direction from the professionals that know a little more in-depth detail on how the laws are actually working.
We talk so often about this team approach to retirement planning. If you feel like your retirement is missing something, chances are it could be. We've found often all it takes to find out is a 15-minute phone call. To set up that introductory phone call, just reach out at 833-MAG-REPORT. That's 833-624-7376. Or check out our website at ionretirement.com. There you can also watch past episodes or submit a question for us to possibly answer in a future episode. When we come back, we'll be continuing Terry and Kathy's story with their healthcare situation. And we'll do that right after this. Hi, and welcome back into Ion Retirement. In this episode, we're talking about Terry and Kathy. And in the last segment, Jonathan referenced Terry and Kathy's estate. And so at this time, let's turn to Gerald Eidelman with Eidelman Law Firm and find out exactly what were Terry and Kathy's estate issues that you were able to help them with.
Sure. Now, their situation was not abnormal in the sense that they had retirement accounts that they had accumulated, they had investment accounts, they had a home they had paid for, but they didn't have anything in place. And what's worse, they were coming from a situation where Kathy's father had passed away several years ago, and they were still probating his estate 6 years later.
6
years later. It's unusual, but it can happen in the case where the assets are distributed in such a way that they need to be contested, or there's people that might actually bring a case into or against the state. And that's what she was dealing with. These things don't get resolved overnight. And so they had this very bad taste in their mouth for this kind of estate planning. So I came in to explain to them, well, that's not the only way you plan your estate. You can do things now that can avoid all of this litigation, that can avoid all of this wasted time. Because while that money is being debated on, all the state is being probated, the money is staying in there. There's less opportunities for investments, and people don't have access to that money. So we wanted to make sure that whatever we set up was a probate avoidance device, so that when they passed away, their children wouldn't go through the same problem. So in this case, as many times, a trust was called for. A trust gives you an opportunity to dictate what you want to happen to all your assets and how do you want to transfer them. It allows you to go forward generations if you want to and dictate how you want that money to be used. And it avoids probate because it's all done in the privacy of the trust. You don't have to go to court to get permission. The trustee of the trust acts according to your wishes and can move immediately as soon as you both pass away. And that's what we set up for them. Of course, we set up powers of attorney for health and finances, which were incredibly important for them for life. But they were really worried about, we went through this headache, can we avoid it?
Thank you, Gerald. And closely related to estate planning is tax issues. Joshua Sikora, Market Tax Services. What were Terry and Kathy dealing with in their tax world?
Yeah, so looking over their previous returns, they had self-prepared for quite a while, and every year they had a tax bill of some size, and it always varied. And after kind of talking about their situation and what they were seeing, they were pulling money out of their IRAs, but the level of withholdings wasn't appropriate to what their overall income picture looked like. So I'm sure, you know, the advisor they'd been working with wasn't a tax professional. So I'm sure the conversation was something like, hey, do you want withholdings? Well, yeah. Well, how much? And then they didn't have an answer.
Blank stare.
So then we'll often just see this magic 10% answer the financial advisor just throws in there. And so as a tax professional, I know when I see that, I know the financial advisor is just kind of shooting off the cuff on what answer to give there, because they're not getting that tax advice at the same time as these financial decisions are going to be made. So we kind of talked about how we work together, Jonathan and I, to make sure that as they pull money out, the appropriate level of withholdings are applied. And that level can change over the course of the year as they start out maybe something similar to what they've done in the past, and then they pull out more money, so then we need to accelerate the level of withholdings to match that. Or it works the other way around, where we need to slow down the withholding because they're not just taking as much out this year as they might have last year.
And it also has to do with, where does the client want to land at tax filing time? Do they want the sweet spot of getting a refund, or would they just as soon let that money continue to be in their accounts working for them?
Right. It's kind of a spectrum. Some people want to owe a lot. Some people want to get a lot back. Some people like just to break even. And so we want to tailor that plan to whatever the client's wishes are.
All of these elements of an effective retirement plan can seem so complex. Income affects Medicare costs, taxes affect estate planning. There's a push and a pull to all of this that can siphon money off your nest egg if you don't have an entire team working together, looking out for your best interests. Market Advisory Group is that team. And to set up a 15-minute phone call, just dial 833-MAG-REPORT. That's 833-624-7376. Or check out our website at ionretirement.com. There you can schedule the brief introductory call or see past episodes where we highlight stories like Terry and Kathy's. Stay tuned. When we come back, we'll have more about Terry and Kathy, and it comes your way right after this. Hi, and welcome back into Eye on Retirement. In this episode, we've been talking about Terry and Kathy, new clients for Jonathon McCoy, and we've covered their tax situation. We've touched on their estate planning issues. Trey Bassa with Market Medicare Advisors, how were you able to help in the situation with Terry and Kathy's healthcare needs?
As Terry and Kathy is getting integrated into the whole firm, this is going to be my first year to really sit down, learn about their policies, and give them a comprehensive review. I like to say that working with MMA is not just a sign you up and kick you out the door kind of relationship. No, we're here year round because we want to stay in touch. We want to help you manage your policies and make sure that you're getting the most out of your Medicare health insurance. So, like I said, this is going to be our first year reviewing with Terry and Kathy, and that's going to just be an overview of how they're feeling about their health, their prescription drugs, how they're utilizing their benefits, and what could it look like next year on different policies, or even maybe if it's on the same policy, what changes are coming to the Medicare system as a whole, and how is that going to affect them as a couple, as individuals on the Medicare system. But at the end of the day, it's one meeting at the year, but I am here year-round to talk with Terry and Kathy as things do come up. Because, like I said, it's a persistent relationship with Terry and Kathy.
And that's one of the neat things about having Market Medicare Advisors in-house. And one of the things I tout with every first client that I meet is that they get to meet with the same healthcare advisor year after year and develop that relationship. And I'm sure you'll speak to this or have spoken to this with clients, but financial decisions can affect Medicare as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, as your income needs change, inflation's going nowhere, and typically life, especially towards those later years in retirement. Actually, Terry and Kathy are both working their way into their 70s. So they've been on Medicare for a while, but as I mentioned, in the 4 years since the very first time that I met with them, their health situation has remained relatively consistent. They're both fairly healthy people, but they've had other issues with property taxes going up. They've had to pull more money out of retirement accounts, causing tax issues and potentially having downstream impacts on their health insurance costs. And when we talked in the first segment about this to-do list, as they were asking for, it's an ongoing process. It's not something that we can just check the box and say, see you in 5 years.
Not a one and done.
Exactly. And this is unfortunately the experience that we see with a lot of folks that are working with a healthcare advisor or a health insurance agent, a tax professional, an estate planning attorney. You stamp those documents, they're notarized, they're done. You know, and a lot of people may not revisit these things for 5, 10, 20 years at a time, especially in the Medicare world, where we see people sign up for a plan at 65, not recognizing the changes that happen behind the scenes. Even if your healthcare needs don't change, the policies, the plans, the companies, what's offered in your area may change. Tax codes will change. Your financial needs are going to change. And those changes need recurring and ongoing review, which is why we have this 3 to 4 meeting review process throughout the year. Let's focus on the taxes at the beginning of the year. Let's focus a little more on the investments and the income need in the middle of the year. Towards the end of the year, it's a full-blown tax review of their income, looking at what their health insurance needs are going to be for the following year and what the best options for that health coverage can be. Because if we're able to save somebody $1,000 even on their health care costs, how much easier does that make our job as financial advisors in terms of keeping money in those accounts?
Exactly.
Keeping the taxable income low. It's every one of these pieces is tied together in our world today, and it's very different than it was maybe 40, 50 years ago when most of the post-Great Depression generation was putting money under their mattress, as a lot of people like to say, but saving in CDs. There wasn't as much of the stock market activity in IRAs and 401ks. So having that comprehensive review, focusing on these different areas of speciality multiple times throughout the years, ultimately that is the to-do list, and it never ends.
And when we talk about how each aspect of an effective retirement plan is intertwined, I'm going to call on Joshua here. We just finished talking a little bit about healthcare, but if things aren't done properly, tax-wise, investment-wise, income-wise, that could trigger in the healthcare world a visit from Aunt Irma.
Yeah, nobody likes to see Aunt Irma show up, right? Because she doesn't just stay for 3 days, for the weekend. No, if there's too much income hitting in a particular year, it could trigger higher Medicare costs a couple years down the road that last all year long. You don't want your relatives staying with you all year long usually, so proactive tax planning can make sure that Irma only shows up when you're okay with her showing up. And that's where, a lot of people, they only see their tax person once a year, right? February, March, and April. But then you're just reporting on what's already happened. It's when we have this ongoing review process like Jonathan was talking about. We have that conversation in the fourth quarter before the year gets closed out. What intentional tax moves should we plan to make now so that we get a different answer when we do the scorekeeping in February, March, and April? And that can make all the difference for people from having these wildly unpredictable tax bills, having, like you said, Aunt Irma show up for a while, and then making their nest egg last much longer in the years where you're not going to be able to do much about it because you're, 80s, 90s, and the ship's already sailed for the most part there.
Jonathan, another illustration of where having a complete team and a holistic approach is strictly to the benefit of the client in front of us.
And what I hope the viewers recognize is these conversations are not strictly focused on, one of the primary duties for our clients is investment management, right? And we don't talk a whole lot about that on the shows. It's not because we have, one specific fell swoop, one size fits all portfolio. It's not that simplistic. That is somewhat second nature to us at this point. It's all of these other areas that are consistently surprising people with unexpected expenses, where the investments are there to grow and support that and support your increasing income needs throughout retirement. But if you're not addressing each of these other areas, in some cases, if you make an extra 10% on your retirement portfolio in a year and your taxes increase by 10% unexpectedly, have you actually made headway? And we've got to be able to tackle and balance all those things within the same conversation.
I use the illustration sometimes of once you hit retirement, age 65 and Medicare, and everything is going together, it's kind of like the pebble in the pond theory.
Yeah.
That pebble drops in the pond and there's a little ripple effect that will go all the way out from where just that one pebble hit.
That's exactly right. And we got to know where those ripples are going to hit the shore in terms of your tax return, your healthcare costs, your estate plan, and what bills you might be leaving to the next generation. It can't be done by one professional.
It can feel so isolating when your retirement planning doesn't seem to be coming together, and maybe it feels like you haven't done enough or didn't make the right decisions earlier, but you don't have to go it alone. It can help to have a whole team working together for your retirement plans. If you'd like to set up a 15-minute introductory phone call with Market Advisory Group to see if we could be the team for you, please reach out right now at 833-MAG-REPORT. That's 833-624-7376. And be sure and check out our shows on YouTube. We upload all of our episodes there for you to watch on demand. Just go to YouTube and search Ion Retirement. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Rick Everett, along with the entire panel, reminding you that we're here to keep an eye on retirement.
Unless otherwise indicated, all client and prospect names mentioned on this show have been changed to protect the identities of the individuals discussed. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. Legal services are offered by Eidelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not in any way refer to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. The guest commentators featured in this show are not investment advisor representatives of Foundations and do not provide advisory services. Market Advisory Group does have several investment advisor representatives that can provide such services. This is not endorsed or affiliated with any U.S. government agency, the Social Security Administration, or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all of your options. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. All rights reserved.